again with Kane Title. So let's talk about the big ugly D in title insurance, divorce. So we all know that that's going to be one of the most common issues that you can run into in dealing with title issues from a seller. So let's talk about how that affects you, your transaction, and the title insurance. So what does a title company require when there's a divorce involved with the sellers? Before title to a property can be changed between divorced spouses, a title company must review the divorce decree. In looking for a valid divorce decree, the title company, will be looking for a final and non-appealable order admitting the decree to the divorce suit. This decree must have been ordered by the judge at least 30 days prior to closing, which is different than your contract date. So just remember that prior to closing, so that either spouse has had the 30-day period to be able to appeal. So a decree is not considered final when it is pertaining to title insurance until that 30-day mark has passed. So what exactly does that mean, and what do we need in the divorce decree? So this is one of the most common questions I get in regards to dealing with a divorce. And let me just also point out that a separation agreement is not a divorce and is handled completely separate. When you're dealing with a divorce in the actual transfer of title, in order for the divorce decree to actually transfer title between the spouses, there's very specific requirements, one of which is the decree must include the language that specifically grants the property to one spouse and divests, keyword divests, the other spouse of any and all interests in that property. And additionally, in order for the divorce decree to be used by the title company, the decree must also contain the legal description, not just property address, of the property in which the spouse who's being divested is being divested from. So citing just the physical address of the property is insufficient to transfer title between spouses. The legal description is required because real property records are indexed under the legal description. So basically, that means that that's what we insure as the title company, is the legal description and not the address. It's very important for us to have. So if a decree is lacking the legal description, it's not going to be effective to transfer title, and you're going to have to go through either getting that corrected or having a deed done. So it's really important, if you're having a divorce prepared during the time of closing or prior to, make sure your title company reviews it to make sure that it's sufficient. We don't want to waste everyone's time if it's not going to have the right language and verbiage that we need. So what happens when there's a lien imposed against the property by the divorce decree? So any divorce decree between property owners must also be reviewed for lien language. If the decree imposes a lien against the property in favor of one ex-spouse over the other, then that lien must be satisfied at closing, meaning it either needs to be paid to the ex or a release of lien must be provided and signed by the ex to be recorded of record. If the title company is paying the lien through closing, the ex-spouse at that time will also be required to sign a release. So very important to make sure if there's a lien, which are very commonly known as oilty liens, O-W-E-L-T-Y, oilty liens, I say that funny, but those are the liens that can be imposed by a divorce decree, and they must be addressed in order for the property to be sold as per the terms in the decree. So what if there's a lien on the property against someone against one of the spouses before the divorce? Meaning like a judgment or something of that nature that could have attached to just one of them and not both, or to the property. So this is another surprise that can happen for sellers and their agents or investors, which involves judgments that were rendered, meaning filed against the property and the spouse before the divorce is final. So many spouses are surprised to learn that when they're awarded the property through a decree, that they actually took interest in subject to lien against their ex-spouse. What that means is that the lien still applies to the property because it was filed prior to the divorce being finalized. So this is something that people do not like to deal with, but unfortunately we have to, which is why title insurance is so important for us to run these property records and run that search to make sure that we know that just because they're divorced, that there may not be something against the ex-spouse that still needs to be addressed at the time of closing. That can really delay things, especially if they're not on speaking terms or don't know how to contact each other. This is one of the biggest surprises and issues we deal with in this kind of situation. So super important to make sure that we check that out. There's certain things that you can do to remedy the situation, like having a partial release of lien filed, lots of options. It really just depends on what kind of lien's recorded and so on. So definitely refer to your title company to help you with that. So what happens when there is a pending divorce, meaning they have a separation agreement or the divorce isn't yet finalized, doesn't have a date? So if your sellers are under contract and have a divorce pending, they must both, and I'm going to repeat that, they must both sign at closing unless the divorce is final 30 days prior to the time, the date of closing. So if they finalize before, it's very important to make sure that the decree, again, has all that required language for divesting the ex-spouse and also referencing the legal description. Without a final, non-appealable divorce decree containing all the necessary items, the proceeds checks will be payable to both spouses and not one or the other or just the one seller who you're working with. So most of the conversations regarding divorce and title issues will happen between the title company and the seller of the property. So it's super important as an investor to understand why, as the title company, the things that we will require so that you can make sure your seller is aware and prefaced for the conversations that we'll have with them, which can kind of be nasty and not fun conversations to have. Help your title company help you, and if there's a divorce involved, prepare everyone to have these kind of conversations and make sure they know the things that we'll have to address. For more information, you can reach out to me.